On the I-9 for the but no, you said it was so eager as far as I understand, it's social security. Yeah. So, okay, so I have my plate badge, my social security. So I have a driver's license. But you want. So you're saying you're gonna do all those and what are they? And you're gonna be able to look at that in Mars, like. If they don't have. But there's, I think, I don't know, so that would be, they would need our. Yeah. Right, so you're on a visa, right. Yeah. So I don't. So they don't get it. Yeah, no kidding, right?
All they do, that's why.
But if they show social security card and driver's license, they're good. I'm gonna look at it.
No.
Yeah. Because the government wasn't.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is having a nice afternoon on this beautiful day that we have. I'm State Rep Nolan, as some of you know. Representative Walker and Undersecretary Karpowitz, I believe, are online. Hello, if you're hearing us. What we're going to do, Representative Walker, do you want to say anything, or Undersecretary? I'm sure they'll say something.
Representative, can you hear me?
Yes,
This is
sir.
Daniel. Sorry, apologies, I can't join you in person today. Glad to be joining online. I have nothing further to add and defer to the co-chair.
Okay, and Rep Walker? Okay, and so we're going to go first. I got to really tell everybody we are getting done at 3:30. Okay, 3:30. So if you're not almost done by 3:25, I need you to remember this. 3:30. All right, so Brittany, if you can open us up with the overview of the meeting and announcements.
Sure, yeah. So as Rep. Nolan alluded to, we do have a packed agenda. We'll first hear from the principal and a student at the University High School of Science and Engineering regarding House Bill 1243. Then we'll have two presentations that have been pulled together from the Center for Children's Advocacy, a red presentation, so a presentation about the local work that they are doing, and then a report out on their report that they created about Connecticut youth with disabilities in the justice system. And if there's time, and if there's not, you have the slides, which talk about the JJPOC 2025 work plans. This sort of outlines the work that each of the work groups are going to sort of tackle or take on throughout this year. So that's an invitation for those of you that are seeing something that's of interest to reach out and become a part of the work group and engage in the conversations now so that you can, be a participant in the work that's developed for the end of the year. And so with that, the only other thing is we'll need to approve the minutes for March.
Okay, seeing that there's nothing else, why don't we approve the minutes for March? Can I get a motion? Motion, could I get a second?
Motion to approve the minutes?
Seconded, approved. Are anybody need to sustain or? No. Okay. And first, up in discussion, the principal here and your student.
She's on her way. I think her
Okay.
Uber took the wrong
So-
direction, but I can talk long enough to get
So
her
the
there.
discussion is going to be over HB 1243. Here with us is Sean Tomini. Is that how you spell it?
Yeah, that's how you
Principal
say
of University High School of Science and Engineering. Thank you for being with us today, and you may start into your.
it. I'm a history teacher. I can't sit down. It's a little different for me. This has been a 2-year process for me, fighting to get this done. And I'm going to tell you a little story because that's what Irishmen do. Letting you know how it came about. So 2 years ago, buses were free for everybody because of the pandemic, right? And I had kids coming in and out of school, and there's one kid, Juan Rivera, a young man who graduated. He's a radiation tech now. He's doing great. And he came into school late. And so I do what principals do, right? I yelled at him. It's 8:30, 9 o'clock. What are you doing? Get to school on time. Giving him a hard time, doing what principals do, right? Because in my office, good kid. And he's like, Mr. Tomini, the bus was full. What do you mean the bus is full? You can stand. No. The bus was full. So I'm giving him a hard time because I think he's just too lazy. He can't stand. And he says, no, the bus is full of Weaver kids. So so what? And it took me a couple of minutes to figure out what he was saying was the bus was so full, he couldn't get on. Right? And then he looked at me and it was February, so it was kind of cold. And he's like, you're lucky I'm here. It's so cold out. And it dawned on me, he's a walker. Right? So if you don't know, if you live 2 miles or more away, you get a bus. If you live 1.99 miles away, you have to walk. So what he had done is he had caught a later bus because he could ride the city bus for free. It was in that moment, and it's a little embarrassing, I'll tell you, as an educator in Hartford, right, that I didn't see this before, is that so many of our kids cannot access their education, their lives, and the things they need because of transportation. And it was at that moment that I sat down with a group of kids. We started the Social Justice League to fight for this to happen, right? Because I didn't get it. My 2 sons got to do anything and everything they wanted because they had transportation. They didn't miss a full day of school because they had a doctor's appointment. They didn't not play a sport because they didn't have transportation. So many of my kids don't have access to transportation, so they don't get to do the things that normal kids get to do. They don't get to connect to their schools, right? I want you to think about it. My students would have to take a whole day of school off to go to a doctor's appointment. Now with the bus pass, They come to school, they leave at 12, they go to the doctor's appointment, or vice versa, they come back. They stay after school for a club, a sport, to go to a game, to stay for a dance. All of the things that we're looking to ask or getting our students, our kids to do, we tell them they can't. Last year, I had a young man in my school who was shot and killed. Right? He was doing things out there, but you know what? His only option was from the time he was born and the time he went to school was to get on a bus and go back to his neighborhood. And he was a great kid. He was starting to make connections at my school. Right? But he couldn't stay because he didn't have transportation. For the last school year, last year the state gave Hartford $175,000, and I've been trying to run a study on the impact of that. In the first month that it was in my school, 5,000 rides. 5,000 rides my students took. Right? And I have some data here. They're going to after school activities, they're going to their clubs, they're going to the mall. They're doing things that normal kids should do. So I'm looking for your help. I'm looking for your support on this bill. I don't think I'm all the way there yet, but giving kids the opportunity to connect to adults, that care, right? Juan Rivera, I was yelling at him, and he didn't necessarily like it in the moment, right? But I was yelling at him to do the right thing. He still calls me to this day. Right? I told you he's a radiation tech because kids want that structure. They want that caring adult. There's some concern about the cost. I've put the data out there. I've gone to the DOT and said, hey, just look at how many kids rode. I told you 5,000. How many kids rode in October? You'll see the difference because they're afraid of lost revenue, right? They're afraid of that they're going to lose bus passes. I'm afraid of losing kids, right? And I have kids that come into my office regularly. I have one of my students here. She'll tell you some more stories about her friends, but Amira Black, a young lady from Bloomfield, came into my office about a month and a half ago, all excited. You know why? She's like, Mr. Tomedy, thank you for the bus pass. I said, okay, you're welcome. She said, I got a job. Wow, good for you. She said, I'm going to buy a car and I've got money to go to the prom. I can buy my prom dress today. That's the real payback, right? We're talking a loss of revenue. If we're going to talk pure numbers, she's buying a dress, she's going to prom, she's buying tickets, she's doing all of these things, right? How much money are we giving nonprofits for bus passes? All of this money that's spent on Boys and Girls Club and Center for Latino Studies and all these different programs, right? They all have bus pass budgets because the kids can't get there. Please help me. Please help my kids. Please help the 119,000 disconnected youth in Connecticut to make a real connection and not having an adult in their life. And I'm going to turn it over to Shay, one of my students, so she can kind of give you a student perspective and some of those stories. Thank you for your time.
Shay, can you tell us your name and what school you go to?
Hello, my name is Oluwaseyi, and I'm a high school junior at University High School of Science and Engineering. And I wanted to, echo a lot of the things that my principal Tomedy said about just the impact of having access to transportation. A lot of my friends, they use transportation to go to sports, after school, attend extracurricular programs. So a really big part of our school is a dual enrollment program through with the University of Hartford, because we're on the University of Hartford campus, and a lot of these classes happen after school, and a lot of my peers are able to take these classes only because they have their bus pass to go home after these classes. And a lot of the opportunities that we have, like Saturday school, take place on the weekends, and they require transportation. So without that, a lot of the young people within Hartford who would have to walk to school to get here are now able to do so through the city bus. But I also wanted to share a personal testament to just the effect of a lack of transportation on the lives of young people. So as Tomedy said, after he noticed the disparity that exists within the Hartford community when it came to transportation access, he started the Social Justice League with a few students to really, campaign for fair free youth transit. And so I was lucky enough to be one of the first members of this group. And I started my advocacy minimally affected by lack of transportation. So I was a part of the volleyball team for my first 2 years of school, very active, doing extracurriculars after school. And I kind of relied on my parents always being there to pick me up. Like, I can do it. My parents are going to pick me up. Until like around mid 2024, my parents' work schedules would drastically change, and I could no longer depend on them to pick me up from after school activities. And so I would hesitate to commit to things after school. And I dropped out of volleyball because I knew the burden it would be on my parents. And in that moment, I was able to tangibly experience what it felt like to be isolated from my community and disconnected from my peers. Because a lot of the ways that we connect with school is through the things that we are genuinely passionate about. That's the extracurricular activities. For a lot of young people, that's the sports. And in that moment, I was able to see why a lot of my friends weren't as engaged in school as I was. So if we want to truly attend to the needs of the young people in Hartford, young people who are vulnerable to outcomes of violence, I think it is very important that we address this disparity in access. And that is what I'll say. I've reached out to a few of the senators. I'm not sure if any are representatives at this table, because I know how important transportation access is for me. It affects me personally. It affects my peers personally. This is something that we don't really give as much attention to, but it is so, 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 so important. So that's all I'll say for now.
Thank you for coming before us and speaking so eloquently and detailed to share what you're trying to fight for. You obviously, for those who might not have caught on, 1243 is an act concerning bus transportation service for veterans and high school students. In the first paragraph, the summary of the bill, it requires Department of Transportation to create a program allowing certain public school students, grades 9 through 12, to ride state-owned or controlled public buses or free or at reduced costs. Separately allows veterans to do that also. So that's the meat of the bill that they're looking to push and get support for. Just a question for you. Um, how many kids do you believe would or have you seen ride the bus to school now because that's their only alternative? That's for you.
Definitely significantly more. Because a lot of people, they just wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things after school because they couldn't afford the bus pass every single day. Like that cost. Wait, can you restate, say the question again? I want to make sure that I understand.
Approximately how many kids do you see riding or that would ride the bus, do you think, if that's that are doing it existingly or that will do it more if it becomes free?
Well, currently it is because we have the pilot program is currently in place at our school. So it is free for the students at our school who apply to get a bus pass. I can attest to the fact that more students are have access to the city bus now that this program has been in place. I don't know a number specifically, but I know a lot of my friends who have the bus pass are using it because it's accessible to them now.
Thank you.
So I have about 200 kids at University High School that are getting a bus pass on a monthly basis. And I've taken to this, the first month was about 4,500 rides. And I'll give you some data. It can actually break it down into like how many times they use it, like weekly, daily, how many rides per actual, because I'm tracking the actual bus cards.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask the co-chairs if they have anything that they want to say or ask.
Rep Nolan, if I just wanted to thank both the principal and the student for the compelling information they shared today. And that's it.
Okay. Is Rep Walker on yet? Anyone else around the circle? Questions, concerns? Nobody? Yes. State your name.
So my name is Gavin Rome and I'm part of CCA. My question is like, would this be available to like Hartford students, period, or just okay, thank you.
Yeah. If it were to be passed, it would be available to all Hartford High School students through your school.
The way the bill is currently written is that the DOT would negotiate with each individual Board of Ed. But my ultimate goal would be for it to be free for all students across the state.
Anyone else? Anyone online? No. Well, I thank you for coming before us this morning. And I'm sure you'll get a great deal of support. And this is something that I'm sure we will, as a group and legislators, make sure we have further discussion on. And I believe if you send this to Brittany, then Brittany will send it out to everybody. Thank you very much. All right, so we are going to first thank again everybody for being here today, in person and those who might be online. We just talked about an overview of HB 1243, and next we're going to go to the red presentation, and Martha Stone is going to grace us with a presentation.
Good afternoon. Martha Stone, Special Counsel and founder of Center for Children's Advocacy. Appreciate the time that everyone's taking to hear our presentation, and I'm here with co-chairs of the RED committee, Brittany Jackson and Christina Baldwin, and we have other presenters around the table. They'll introduce themselves as they present. So just to put this work in context, we started the what was called the DMC committee back in 2012. So it's been going on in Hartford for about 14 years now. And we got a Public Welfare Foundation grant. At the time, it was DMC, Disproportionate Minority Confinement Contact. We then ended up, I went to Justice Keller at the time, and I said we wanted to look more broadly, not just at confinement issues. We wanted to look at the whole continuum. So she actually was the first co-chair with me back in 2012. We started in Hartford. We have subsequently expanded to Bridgeport, Hartford, Waterbury, New Haven, and most recently in Hamden. So if you look at this slide, it really talks about who's around the table. So we meet quarterly for each one of these 4 RED meetings. It's RED stands for Racial and Ethnic Disparity Reduction Committee. And we have partners represented from the school system, the police department, judicial department, both from probation and the judges. We have representation from community partners, from the cities themselves, and from DCF and the Public Defender's Office. I think that this slide really shows, and the reason that I've invited the other partners here today is to show the collaborative nature of this work. It is co-chaired by Center for Children's Advocacy, but by no means are we the main partners. We could not do this without the cooperation of all the state agencies that are involved, as well as the local partners. So this particular slide shows the purposes of the work. And the first writing here shows reduce overrepresentation. And that's really when you look at the disproportionality. Are youth of color disproportionately affected by the justice system? The second bullet talks about reducing disparate treatment. That's different from the disproportionality. And the third bullet is important because a lot of the racial disparity studies and strategies don't look at the last bullet. And from the beginning with Justice Keller, we started looking at the last bullet. The two most important words on that are entering and then moving through. So we backed up looking at the RED work. We originally backed it up to look at admissions into detention. In the last few years, we've backed it up even more and started looking at suspensions and expulsions, and then truancy and chronic absenteeism, because those are some of the gateway behaviors that lead to further involvement in the justice system. And so then we look at movement through, and that would go from detention, diversion, detention, admission to detention, re-entry, and then eventually potentially transfer to the adult system. So I like this slide because I always say to people, if you remember nothing else about what I talk about, please remember these two icons, the onion and the flashlight. Because what this work does is really trying to shed the light with the flashlight on the data, and then you start peeling the onion and you start looking at the different layers of where are the problems. And so we look at site specific, and this is one of the other issues that I think is really important about this work, that Hartford is going to be different from New Haven, which is going to be different from Waterbury or Hamden. So to give you a couple of examples, we've looked at particularly car thefts, which were substantially higher in New Haven. For a while, we were looking in Waterbury at the school-based arrests because they had the highest number of school-based arrests. So it's really important to look at the data by geography and not just the raw numbers. The reason that I put this slide in was because it shows the school demographic data. And I always hand out at every single one of the red meetings when we do them every 3 months, because you have to ground the work in the racial disparity numbers. And so this just happens to be New Haven. We have figures for the other 4 cities, but you can see that the Black population of youth now in New Haven is 33%, and Hispanic or Latino is 49%. It's higher for the Latino population in every single one of the cities where we do this RED work. So the next 4 slides, and I'm not going to, go laboriously through those, but the reason that I put these 4 slides in was for a couple of reasons. You've seen these slides before. They were presented by your equity dashboard. And the equity dashboard, which is done by OPM at the state, I think is a really important effort. And what the RED work does, it basically complements the equity dashboard. It's not meant in any way to take away from the importance of the equity dashboard. It really is showing that once you have these raw numbers statewide, you need to look at them site specific and drill down on the numbers. It's the peeling of the onion issue, which I spoke about before. So for instance, let's just look at Bridgeport for a minute. Bridgeport, if you look at the left-hand side, it's showing the numbers of Black youth increasing, right? We had a dip during COVID, and so we can't really say, oh, great, the numbers are going down, because the numbers went down, as we know, during the COVID period, and now the numbers are going back up. For instance, on the Black youth, so 237 Black youth were referred, these are referrals to court, were referred to court in 2024. The right-hand side does something different. The right-hand side looks at RRI, which is the relative rate index, which is what is the likelihood of a youth of color getting arrested and referred to court. So if you look at the RRI data for the 4 cities that we're concerned about, let's go to the New Haven chart. Way on the right-hand side, you have the number 1.30. That means Black youth are 1.30 times more likely to get arrested and referred to court than white youth. The numbers here for New Haven are showing 2023 data. If you look, and I don't have that on the slide, if you look at the 2024 data for New Haven, Black youth are 1.72 times more likely to get arrested and referred to court. So the numbers for Black youth are actually increasing, unfortunately, and not decreasing. If you go to the next slide, which is the Waterbury slide, you're going to see, again, disproportionality with the RRI index. If it's below 1, there's not disparity. If it's over 1, you show disparity. And so, you know, the good news is that Waterbury has come down, but it is still showing that Black youth in Waterbury are 1.17 times more likely to get referred to court than white youth. And that is why this work by the Equity Dashboard and by the RED local committees continues to be really important, because these numbers, we have got to try to address these numbers. The next 2 slides, I'm going to turn over to my co-chairs, Christina Baldwin, who's the co-chair in Hartford, and if you both of you could introduce yourselves.
Thank you, Martha. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Christina Baldwin. I am the director for the City of Hartford's Department of Families, Children, and Youth. And as Martha stated, I co-chair the RED committee in Hartford with her.
Hi, my name is Brittany Jackson. I also co-chair the New Haven RED committee. I also work for Clifford Beers Community Center.
Thank you. And we'll just briefly, thank you. The next slide on the screen shows an example, a sample of a meeting agenda, a typical meeting agenda. This sample happens to be for Hartford, but as Martha stated earlier, they are structured similarly across all of the different cities. However, the focus at any particular RED meeting might be very specific to that particular community. So the meeting agendas often consist of diving really deep into the data, looking at data across several different systems, including school and community-based arrests. We look at diversion opportunities. So for example, juvenile review board referrals. We will also look at school engagement, chronic absenteeism, and discipline within the school systems. And we also delve deep into the data of looking at DCF-involved youth. So again, the meetings with all of the different entities, agencies, and partners around the table will dive really deep into the data for that particular entity. And then we'll take a look at it very holistically and systemically to say, where are we seeing gaps, where are we seeing trends, and how can we best work together collaboratively to help support the young people. Moving on to the next slide, some of the benefits of the RED committee collaboration. There are many, but this slide shows just a few of the benefits. So the first one, I think, really being that, with all of the different entities that are around the table, it creates for a very strong collaborative partnership type of approach to dealing with the work. We are able to discuss very high level systemic issues and then also to get down sort of, into what specific youth are facing along the broad spectrum of our entire system. So by having, entities such as the school system and DCF and the police, and juvenile probation and others around the table, it brings us together on this quarterly basis for us to say, okay, what are we seeing across all of these different entities, across all of these different systems, and it allows us to be able to cohesively discuss these issues and to collaboratively come up with solutions.
Some of the issues that we've been able to highlight are some of the emergent trends that we're starting to see around our collective cities, whether it's truancy. We've seen an uptick in girls fighting within schools, out of schools as well. And like Martha highlighted a little bit earlier, particularly in New Haven, car theft. That is kind of peaked in New Haven, unfortunately. But it allows us to identify those trends. We meet quarterly often and sooner than later. So it allows us to develop strategies, come together, fill in those gaps, elevate some of the practices and strategies that we already have in place, whether it's restorative justice, or how to utilize some of our diversion programs, whether it's JRB, through the schools or through any of our partners that sit at our tables.
Additionally, it allows us to identify gaps in our system and the coordination of our system. Some of those gaps that have been elevated would be respite for girls. So services for youth under the age of 12 is a huge gap that we're seeing across our communities. Foster care homes is also uplifted as another gap. Employment opportunities. So employment opportunities, definitely in Hartford, there's just a finite number, so not enough opportunities for the number of young people that need them. After school activities, I think Shay spoke about it very eloquently earlier, both inside and outside of school. After school activities that meet the wide range and diversity of needs that our young people are interested in is definitely a gap. MST wait lists, training for police officers. We've also identified as a gap across the different municipalities, as well as more flexible funding and substance abuse services. So these are all examples of some recent gaps that we have identified that we are starting to work on together at our respective RED committees.
And I would say what also I think makes this work even more important is just the relationships matter. So being able to build these relationships with community-based programming, state level programming, I think really helps. Recently, we lost one of our bigger voices in each of our communities, which was our list programs and our list meetings. And that highlighted a lot of the work that the RED does. We identified the numbers of our Black and brown youth that are coming in contact with the court system. So that's left a big gap. And I think the RED, it kind of uplifts that and it still keeps it a topic of conversation. And I think it's an absolute necessity.
I'm sorry, you talked briefly about high-level systematic issues. Could you share some of those issues that you're running into when it comes to that?
So I would say respite for girls, I think that is one of the issues that we're experiencing. Like I said, one of the highlights were our girls fighting within the community. There's a big gap in services and I think they're 12 and under also. So that's a big challenge in providing services for that specific demographic.
I'm sorry, for systematic issues. You mentioned that earlier. I'm just curious if are you talking more with the judicial system when you say systematic issues, or are you talking with agencies that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing at that level?
I think it could be, both or across the board. I think it's very community specific, right? So I know in Hartford, Lieutenant Michael, who will be speaking in a little while, he and I have identified a systemic issue within our Hartford community around police referrals to the Juvenile Review Board, which have decreased significantly post-COVID. So that's something that, by mechanism of being able to meet as part of the RED committee, we identified, and so that we're able to work on that broadly. So that would be one example of a systems type of issue that we're working on addressing.
Okay.
So the next main topic, and we have a few main topics, is diversion. And I believe that Noelia is going to talk about that. You want to introduce yourself first?
Good afternoon, Noelia Dondell, Juvenile Matters Supervisor out of the New Haven Juvenile Court. As through the RED meetings, we meet quarterly and we have identified cases or referrals that have not been referred to by the police department to the JRB, and in collaboration with the New Haven PD and Urban Community Alliance, which holds our JRBs in New Haven, we have been able to assist the PD in training their new cadets as well as their school resource officers for them to understand what the JRB offers to families and how they can increase those referrals for those cases who are low risk and low misdemeanor charges. We have seen an increase in those referrals to the JRB, which has helped families not enter into our system as frequently.
So if you click on it. So this is part of the diversion agenda that we look at. And if you look at the this is an example of what the Urban Community Alliance presents at the meetings on the JRB statistics. Each JRB presents their statistics differently. But we look at numbers of referrals, we look at what the youth got, we look at completion rates to see if some of the interventions are actually working. What we don't have, and this is another gap, I don't know if you want to put it in the systemic category, we don't really have recidivism data right now for youth that are going to the JRB. I think that's something that is in the forefront, and I think that the state agencies are working on that. But right now, we are not able to report whether the kids who go through the JRBs are actually being successful 2 years out, 1 year out, which I think is really an important point to look at. The next area that we look at are school-based arrests. And Kathy Nazario is going to talk about that. If you could introduce yourself, Kathy.
Good afternoon, Catherine Nazario, Family and Community Engagement Supervisor for the Craig Magnet School System. In working with the RED, we attend the meetings, and after attending the meeting, we look at our data and we look at specific schools who have a high number of school-based arrests. My role is to go back and meet with our central office team, which is assistant superintendents and the superintendent, discuss the data and look at what gaps and resources we can allocate to that particular school. We also recently just had Juvenile Probation Office Supervisor Jelisani Hernandez come and meet with central office staff and explain more closely the JRB process and how principals can use the word when they're calling the police officers to respond and do more referrals to the JRB. She recently came also to a principals meeting where she met with all the principals of the Craig Magnet schools to explain the process, and she's scheduled to come in May to talk to the assistant principal about the process of the JRB. As a family community engagement supervisor, I have family engagement staff that work directly with the families and the students who are being impacted by the school-based arrest in conducting home visits and also attending the JRB process and also the court meetings. We have a lot of families who, because of language barriers, are not understanding their rights, and we're there to advocate for them. So our community-based, our family engagement staff at the school are the ones that may be at the JRB meetings or at the court facility meetings that they have. So our role is to really look at the data and go back into the schools with these arrests and implement not only from the school-based level, but from central office all the way down to the families and students.
So I think Kathy gave a good example. If you look at this particular slide that's up there now, it shows that CREC really had some of the most significant number of arrests. If we hadn't looked at the data by school, we wouldn't have known that. And so some of the responses are really the data, again, shines the light, and then you start peeling the onion. You say, well, which schools are contributing to these arrest numbers? And then once you identify that, it's like, well, what should the response be? And so I think the example that Kathy gave really shows how we do the deeper dive into the work. The next area that we're going to look at is community-based arrests, and Lieutenant Sean Michael from the Hartford Police Department will cover those.
Good afternoon, Sean Michael. I'm a lieutenant with the Hartford Police Department. So I'm going to go over how the Hartford Police Department participates in the Red Committee. I sit on the Red Committee to represent the department. First, I'll get into kind of why I felt it was so important to be involved. So I've been with the department since 2006, currently a lieutenant in our detective bureau. Prior to that, right out of college, I worked for about a year as a teacher in a juvenile detention center. After that, for 2 years, I worked in adult corrections. So I got to see firsthand how young men and women can get sucked into the criminal justice system at a young age and how it can then flow into their adult life. I saw young men and women for low-level offenses become into the system and then progress into the system as adults and have trouble getting out of it. So I felt it was very important for the police department to be heavily involved and to do our part here. So what I do is quarterly, I bring statistics to the table. We analyze those statistics. I believe they're going to show the specifics, but I'll give you the overview. So it's going to be arrest statistics for juveniles for the quarter. We break them up by district, location of arrest, day of the week, time of day, gender and race, type of offense, and summons versus a JRB referral. So how those statistics are used. So we're now bringing all of this information to the table as a group. We're analyzing it. We're trying to figure out positive solutions to problems. So we analyze this data. We want to reduce these arrests and increase the referrals to JRB. So what we've done is we've analyzed the Hartford Police Department's process and found ways that we can enhance our JRB referrals. So we're moving in that positive direction. So between 2023 and 2024, we saw a 19% reduction in juvenile arrests. So we're moving in the right direction. We just got to keep that going. So one of the other benefits of this is now I'm meeting with this group of individuals. I'm taking data and I'm bringing it back to the police department. So once a week, we meet during a ComStat meeting. It's all the commanders, all the chiefs of the police department. So I'm able to take the feedback from this committee and now spread it across to all the leaders in the department to now put our senses together to try to help and solve the problems on top of the committee. So another one of the main uses is we analyze repeat offenders. We want to identify gaps in services. So we want to see if we have these juveniles that are becoming repeat offenders, we want to analyze that. We want to make sure that they're getting the right social services to try to deter them from going farther down that line. So some of the benefits and accomplishments that we've seen, most importantly, I think, is the elimination of information silos. Criminal justice, specifically law enforcement, historically has had issues with information silos and breaking through those. I feel like we've come a long way over the last decade. This meeting is pivotal in that because it's bringing all the different agencies together, law enforcement, the courts, social services, all at the table to talk together, to make those connections, to bring these issues to light and figure out positive solutions. As we talked about, valuable feedback from the group to improve policing practices. I believe the Hartford Police Department does an outstanding job, but we can always improve. We can always do better. We can always learn. And one of the great ways to do that is taking feedback from all these different agencies, our community partners, and now me having the ability to bring that back, to present it to the chiefs, to present it to the other lieutenants, and figure out ways that we can fix these issues and bring these kids in a positive direction. So again, one of the other benefits and accomplishments is a general decrease in community-based arrests. We're seeing that. We're trending in that direction, 19% reduction. Our goal is to keep that going. I believe, oh, so here is, these are an example of the quarterly report that we bring forward. I take credit for this. There's a crime analysis. She's unbelievable. Amber, that works for the Hartford Police Department. She creates this for me, puts it in this format, and it just hits all those different criteria. So I'm able to present it to the group. Together, we figured out what's happening in a certain location near a school. So I was able to take that information back to the police department, spread it to our district commanders, our community service officers, to show a presence in that area, try to deter the issue, prevent the issue from getting worse. So another example of great benefits by this legislation. And the rest is just more examples of ways broken up. I think it's a great thing. This here is a map which shows the concentration of the arrests. The darker the color of that yellow reddish means the larger number of arrests that are. So I'm able to review this with the partners on the Red Committee, take this back to the police department here on ComStat, identify these areas, and then as a police department, figure out what we can do to solve it. So many great benefits that come from this.
Lieutenant, when you talk about 19% down, what is that number down from?
So we were at 258 in 2023, and we trended down to 210 arrests in 2024. I think a lot of that has to do with the JRB referral process. So instead of taking these low-level crimes where we're entering a juvenile into the criminal justice system, we're deferring to the JRB to try to get them programs and other things as opposed to an arrest.
And on your screen there, the darker areas, what are the concentrations of that
So we're seeing
neighborhood?
that mostly it has to do with when schools get out.
Okay.
So we have many different schools in the city. They're all letting out around that same time. So now we're getting individuals from different neighborhoods, different schools, all coming together. The majority of it are basic fights, verbal arguments, low-level things.
And before we go to does anybody else have questions? Nobody? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'm trying to figure out how to formulate this. So that's arrest data. Do you track contact with the youth that falls short of arrests? Like, do you have a way of tracking that?
So we have something called field interviews.
Okay.
So if an officer has a contact with a juvenile, they'll fill out a field interview form. That's then stored and we use it for intelligence matters or something like this where we're trying to identify a problem. So that's more geared towards adults and intelligent level things at the street level, but would also be done at a juvenile level if they have contact that doesn't result in arrest. So also the officers have discretion. So just because they intervene in a situation doesn't mean we necessarily have to make an arrest. Now we have the JRB, which is unbelievable, but they also have the ability to mediate the situation, but still document it. So we'll also see it in a report format also.
And have y'all considered like social workers or any kind of mental health professional going out, and do you use those services as well?
Yes, we do. So my division in particular, I oversee our special investigations division. So it's all the crimes against children. This year I brought in a child advocate from the Klinberg Child Advocacy Center in Hartford. So she went through our background process, got cleared. She has a desk right in the middle of the floor with all my detectives. And we wanted to get, especially as children become victims of crimes, we wanted to have those services immediately there for them. The department also partners with the HEART team, which is out in the street. They have social service providers, mental health providers that are actually responding to these calls. So over recent years, they've taken over where they'll respond to a call as opposed to the police, to try to mediate those things and deal with them so they don't result in an arrest level.
Last thing, I'm assuming that is that okay?
Oh, go ahead.
I'm assuming that we have social workers at DCF outposted in police stations, and do you have one?
Yes, I also have 2 DCF workers that work directly out of my office. Yep, same exact thing. They have a workstation right in the mix with my detectives, and so they're interacting with them daily.
For the record.
For the record, yeah. And that's actually a model that I'm hoping to expand on. I want to bring in additional social services to work directly with detectives in that line of work.
Right. That's good. I can't see undersecretary. I don't know if he's all set. Does he have? Okay.
Shahan is going to address this issue also.
Thank you, Martha, and good afternoon. My name is Tasha Hunt. I'm the Director of Juvenile Probation at the Judicial Branch Court Support Services Division. And part of the work that we are doing as it relates to community-based arrests is really looking at the data and using that data to inform how best to not only address the goals that Martha spoke to, that this RED committee is looking at around disparities, but also how to ensure that if kids are coming and entering into the system and perhaps their diversion opportunities, when you look at this data in a few moments, you'll see that for some kids, they need additional support. And so first and foremost, I just want to commend the Center for Children's Advocacy and the RED work that's happening throughout the state. And thank you for inviting us to this table nearly 15 years ago, because we do believe that the data that we are able to gather on the judicial side has been beneficial in helping us better understand what's happening at the front end as well as the back end of the system. And so when you look at that slide there, you'll see that there are just some data related to the number of clients that are coming in to the system. And you are also seeing that there are some clients that are showing, and I cannot see that far, so I cannot tell you exactly the number, but you can see for each one of those graphs that, thank you for, for each graph, you can start to see for the lines there as it gets thicker. You can see that top number that speaks, that is labeled C. Those are the number of clients that are referred. And then you see directly under that D, and that represents the number of dockets. So for some of our kids, you'll see where the number is different, that they may have multiple referrals to the court. And so part of the work that we are doing beyond the diversion is to look at, for those kids who are considered repeaters with multiple arrests, are there opportunities for us to either enhance that diversion in the community, which I think over the years we've seen a shift in our diversion system, and the ability of the juvenile review boards to accept kids who may have multiple arrests that are low level and are low risk and warrant just a community response. But then we've also seen that we are often looking at kids who are coming into the court system and their case is being handled by a probation officer either non-judicially or judicially before the judge. And so part of the work in the community, if it is appropriate for a child to have another opportunity at diversion, is to figure out what is it that this child or this family may need as far as the additional level of support to ensure that that child does not get rearrested. And for those kids who are coming into the system with multiple referrals that requires a court intervention, we are also looking at not just what may have happened with respect to any systemic barriers, but also if there are other opportunities that may be available to that child and family that would prevent them from returning to the court system. So we are spending time with the help of our business intelligence unit to look at the data and better understand the profile of the kids who are either getting rearrested in the community or the profile of the kids who are coming into the court system. And so that work and the conversations at the red table with Supervisor Dundell here, as well as we also have supervisors in our other red locations who are going back and we're doing case file reviews and really talking about the needs of our kids and families and ways that we can share resources around the red table to ensure better outcomes. So thank you.
Our next group, and I appreciate the letting us have all of the partners speak because it really does show the breadth of the work and it shows both the commitment and the breadth. And I really appreciate the data that were given by the state agencies and by the cities because we couldn't do this work without the partnership. Our next presenter is on crossover youth, and that's Sarah Gibson from DCF. Thank you. Good afternoon. As Martha noted, I'm Sarah Gibson. I'm with the Department of Children and Families. I'm a Systems Program Director in Region 4, which is Hartford and Manchester. And I'm going to speak specifically about our role at the Red and around how we collaborate for our DCF involved youth. In each of the 5 Red committees across the state, DCF presents data around 3 primary areas of focus. And you'll note that on the sample agenda, which is arrests in group care and therapeutic level foster care, placement stability of youth in care, specifically around runaway and AWOL activity, and then youth who are actively involved across multiple systems. So those youth who are involved with DCF, also involved with probation, and also showing up in our educational systems around school disengagement and chronic absenteeism. And then when we look at just using the data to show how we engage it, I want to just emphasize that our data is not statistically valid. It's not data that is highly sophisticated, but it serves a purpose to help us focus in on the areas where we want to pay attention and create some opportunities to do some work to have some impact. So for one example, if we go to slide 3, we see some arrest data across the state. I'd love to note that the department has engaged in some very targeted interventions over the past many years to impact the arrest rate with our youth in group care. By working with our group care facilities around, for example, creating policies and practices for them to access other resources before going to 911, bringing in more training for staff, also bringing in restorative justice practices to help create other ways to handle incidents that are coming up on site. But one of the things that we noted when we see high volume of police calls or arrests is that in one specific example, we did see that in a group care facility in Hartford, and we were able to convene a group with Hartford Police, the provider staff, as well as DCF staff to take a look at what was going on and to identify and subsequently implement some strategies that we're able to impact and reduce that activity, some of which is helping to bring in staff from the police department in situations when nothing bad is happening, and to create positive relationships between the young people and the police so that the young people can start to trust the police and see ways to start engaging in more positive pro-social behaviors. And what we always look at in terms of data fields is we're looking at race and ethnicity and gender. We look at age, the number of incidents, as well as the number of unique children. So it shows us which of our children are engaging in those behaviors more repeatedly than some of those others. We look at legal status, and we also look at the placement type for those youth. And then when we look at those youth who are actively involved, this slide on slide number 7 and 8 shows our youth who are actively involved with the department and with probation. Again, we use this data to help us identify themes and trends, issues and gaps. We're looking really for opportunities for increased coordinated collaboration across the systems. We want to improve both individual and systemic responses. We're looking at service coordination, who's referring for what services, where could we look to try and make additional referrals, and making sure that that youth needs is being comprehensively met. So that is, and then you'll see there's some notations at the bottom of that, which is really just where we start to identify. We can see that
where the youth are showing across. So, for example, we see youth who are showing up not only in probation and DCF, but also are engaged in runaway activity. And we know we want to put some heightened attention to those youth. So, thank you.
So our last group is the school engagement and City of Hartford. Abby, do you want to introduce yourself?
Of course. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Abby Olinger Quinn, and I'm the Senior Director of Performance for Hartford Public Schools. I've been serving on the RED committee for maybe about 7 years now. It's gone through membership changes over my time that I've served there. But my role from the performance office for the school system is really to report quarterly on data about Hartford youth, such as their absenteeism, their discipline involvement, and their engagement and re-engagement efforts in school. We bring data based on the request of the co-chairs, and so it may change over time, but often we look at things like these types of indicators by school outcomes, by race, by grade level, by disability, and by age of our learners. We really look at trends and monitor outcomes, and sometimes we're very focused on our highest risk youth, which might be our students with disabilities, or even our overage undercredited youth, in particular, the children that are age 15 to 16, maybe a 9R, have been repeating high school for a number of years. When we think about truancy, chronic absenteeism, and discipline involvement, the school district refers to these as early warning indicators, and these are important to us along with course failures because we know that these are indicators of future graduation success or dropout or disengagement from school. So when a student has one or more of these indicators, it's something that we really pay attention to try to put interventions in place to support them. So we have an example here of some of our data, and this would be one type of information. On average in Hartford Public Schools, 1 in 3 students are chronically absent, and the definition of that is that they are missing 10% or more of the school year, which equates to at least a month of instruction. When we look at our high schools, we can see we have a vast disparity between our outcomes when it comes to chronic absenteeism. You heard Principal Tomini earlier presenting about his struggles with getting kids to attend school, and that's at University High School. That actually has the lowest absenteeism rate of any school in our district. They're 18%, but that's still about 6% higher than they were last year. He has since struggled to get kids to come back to school. He's advocating through his work with the transportation passes. But when you see our comprehensive high school outcomes for the city schools here that are Buckley, Hartford High, or Weaver, you will see chronic absenteeism rates that are upward of 60 to 70% of the population is missing at least a month of school. And I will also add additional statistics that on any given week, we might have 400 kids missing the full week of instruction. And at any given week, we may have about 150 kids who have not come to school at all for the school year. So a lot of this has been information that we share with the RED committee, and there have been additional benefits. Through this work, we discuss different types of information that districts like CREC, Kathy Nazario's district, and Hartford schools, as well as probably other urban districts that we're trying. Some of those interventions that we might discuss address absenteeism. That could be things like the LEAP program. That would be the Learner Engagement and Attendance Program, where we have specially trained home visitors going to people's homes, families and students, to try to make trusting relationships and try to get those children back into school, come up with ways to overcome barriers to school attendance, and also put programs in place that will keep them engaged, such as getting them enrolled in after-school programming and consistent programming through the summer so that we don't lose them after school or during the summer. Another example would be Project Prevent, and this is a program that CREC has been implementing to deal with pervasive violence in the community, and it offers additional supports to learners like wraparound mental health supports, conflict resolution strategies, and other strategies to try to keep kids from getting justice involved. one of the other additional things that I would want to mention as a benefit to the school district is increased collaboration with people that I might not otherwise interact with. I think I have advocated for additional representation of our school system on the RED committee. We have about 5 members who serve, including our security team, our social work team, and our attendance and engagement team also attend the meetings, so we can collaboratively strategize around things that our kids need. But also it helps us network with members of the team when we talk about youth that are probation involved, or youth that are DCF involved in congregate care, or youth that have a YSB, Youth Service Bureau referral, things like that, so we can have better connections about students we have in common.
So in conclusion, the next steps, I'm not going to go into this particular slide. I'd like to do the next slide. Because where do we go from here and how can we sustain this effort? You know, we right now get funding from JJPOC, Office of Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention. That funding will end in the fall. So there's one issue about how to sustain this work. The other issue is, what about all the other towns that we're not in, right? We concentrate on 4 or 5 towns. But if you look at the statistics, there are other towns that have the RRI index that I talked about at the beginning is pretty significant. We are in Hamden, but nobody's doing this work in Meriden or Norwalk. And if you look at some of those RRI index about our Black youth being more likely to get arrested and referred to court than white youth, given the population and the referral numbers, you can see the stark disparity there. So I'd like to end by thanking all of my co-chairs, the participants, the state agencies that provide our data, and we'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you so much, Martha. This was some great information, and I thank you for everybody who brought a piece of the pie back so that we can understand in more depth what you're actually doing to try and make this work. And I agree, it does definitely need to go out to other districts because there are a lot of RI index communities out there that probably can use similar rewards. Anyone have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Just one comment. This is exceptional work. I feel like all heads are put together to resolve, you know, an issue that we know is needs much attention. So it's great to see the collaboration. I wanted to, for the record, I know that there had been some different interpretations of what we mean by crossover youth. So I want to put that down as an agenda item so that we can be nice and clear when we say crossover youth, what we mean, because it may mean different things to different people. So I just wanted to put that down as a follow-up action item.
Is that some? What's that? All right. So we have, let's see. Sarah Egan is next. Do you believe that you have enough time, or do we need to forward you to the next meeting? Because the next meeting we do have time. Okay. If you would like to come up forward to the next meeting or come up. Okay. Yeah, the next meeting definitely, the next meeting definitely has time, I believe, right, Brittany? But while we have a few minutes, and if people want to have dialogue about what was discussed, or do people want to just go home? I heard a go home. All right. Undersecretary?
Yes, Representative.
Would you like to close us out, sir?
I want to thank the child advocate for their patience with us and willingness to reschedule until the next session. Thanks, Ms. Lamar, for helping us arrange that, and thank you, Rep, for running the meeting.
Well, it was good to see y'all, and I can't wait to the next meeting to get a little deeper in what we're doing. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you to the youth that are here for always coming and showing that they're advocating for themselves and others. Everyone,